This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine sponsors at the DSP Network is The Athletic. And The Athletic is premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Listeners of this very episode of Tiger Talk can get 20% off the first year of an annual subscription by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and fun. That is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, happy opening day, post-opening day now, you could say, here on Tigers Talk this week. How are you doing, by the way?
Vito, the baseball season started. I did not think I would watch as much baseball as I did, and it just goes to show you we're junkies. I'm a sports junkie. I love all things Detroit sports, and right away, game one, we got a lot to get into regarding Ron Gardenhire, some moves that he's made. We thought that he would, at least from game one, allow this team to play fundamentally sound baseball. A lot of mistakes were made game one, Vito, in terms of the fact that, remember, in the sixth inning, the Detroit Tigers had the lead, and Jordan Zimmermann gave you enough to help you win that game. And you go in and you decide, okay, who is the first guy from the bullpen that you're going to bring in to help the Detroit Tigers? A bullpen that everybody's mad at. A bullpen that has pissed everybody off for now the better part of 6, 7, 8 years. When are they going to fix that bullpen? Who do they bring in? Do they bring in a specialist? Do they bring in somebody that can get outs? No. They bring in Drew Verhagen. And what does he do? Sabermetrically speaking, if you knew his numbers and you knew his ability to get guys out, you would know you don't bring him in the sixth inning. He can't get guys out. He pitches to contact. He can't get guys out. And you bring him in. And right away, what happens? Boom, first guy gets on base. You give up the lead. And right away, that was one of the first decisions that Ron Gardenhire made, and it blew up in his face. And then you look at it and you go, you know what? You can argue that him getting ejected at the call was really a bad move because, you know what? Even you and I tweeted out and said, look, Alex Wilson looks drained here in extra innings. He's thrown damn near 55 pitches. What's going on? What happens next? Throws a pitch, a meatball to the Pittsburgh Pirate, and you lose the game. A game in which you could argue they got screwed, and they did. Major League Baseball royally screwed the Detroit Tigers.
Has admitted since, too, that it made a mistake, which was great to see.
Way too long on the review.
Yes.
The Tigers did get screwed by Major League Baseball and that stupid replay system, but in essence, there were some things that happened fundamentally that did not make me happy with Ron Gardenhire, and I did not like the fact that it was nice to see him kind of go out there and do the rah-rah thing, but you know what? Wins are a premium nowadays, and he needed to be there the entire game. And then after the game, you know, obviously the media wants to go and talk to him. You send out some nobody to come talk to us, the media. What that first weekend, Vito, when you looked at the attendance.
Oh, it was bad, right?
Bad attendance, bad play. You get swept by the Pirates, and it wasn't even that competitive. It was really bad. As an opening weekend, as bad as you thought it could go, it went worse. And that's what I come away with. It was a worse opening weekend than what we expected. And now you got to play a bad Royals team. You got to win the series to get back to 500 going forward. It was just, in terms of the start of the season, watching baseball, I wasn't impressed with the fundamentals, especially with the game on Monday with Reyes. He looked lost out there in the outfield, made a couple bad decisions that people went, whoa. Then you almost get Jose Iglesias hurt. You almost significantly hurt a prominent player on our team. And so my first reaction was significant disappointment. I'm glad they won the game versus the Royals, but they're terrible. You can't glean a whole lot from it, right? In terms of the fact that the Royals are probably the worst team in the American League Central, maybe even in the entire American League. But it was nice, at least, Vito, to start watching some games that counted. We get a chance to see, some wrinkles with James McCann. We get a chance to see, Francisco Liriano, Jordan Zimmermann, Michael Fulmer. It was just all around, Vito, as you can see, way different than in the spring training. I'm just more excited. I'm excited to pick your brain regarding what happened in the first couple games. But obviously, let's start with game one. What did you make of Ron Gardenhire's opening game managing the Detroit Tigers?
Well, honestly, I did appreciate highly that he went out there to argue that overturned call for the play at home when Castellanos, not the best slide, slow as molasses, right? I mean, he showcased some extremely slow wheels getting to home plate in record slow time, I would say. But I did appreciate that he did go out there and argue with the umps after the call was reversed, after the long review. How do you get the chance to review that play at home plate for 5 minutes? And so if it took that long to review the play, that means it was not indisputable. It was disputable, right? What they were looking at. The play at the plate was disputable. It wasn't conclusive that, hey, that Castellanos was out, that a tag was made by Francisco Cervelli, the catcher of the Pittsburgh Pirates, to tag Castellanos out at home. It wasn't conclusive. It wasn't indisputable. It was highly disputable, and you overturn that call, and luckily Major League Baseball has admitted since that it made a mistake, but still doesn't make up for the fact that the Tigers lost a game. It should have won on opening day, could have continued its opening day winning streak, but instead lost that game and went 0-3 to start off the season. Getting swept by the Pirates at home to start off the season. Not a great way to start the season when now you're playing the Royals, maybe the worst team in all of baseball, and now they have Salvador Perez, by the way, out for 4 to 6 weeks or something. That's a mighty big blow to them.
What happened? A game that during the Tigers, they got hurt?
No, already, before the Tigers series. So he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. That's a big bat for them.
What happened?
He just went down with an injury. I'm not sure what the injury is.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
But still, he's out. You just have Mike Moustakas now for the Royals in their lineup. That really you fear. So you have to take 2 out of 3, and like you said, you have to sweep the Royals to get back to 500, if anybody cares. So you could look at it in this respect that, hey, it's a blessing in disguise. They lost that first game instead of winning it, that they went 0-3 because, well, you enhance your odds of getting that number 1 pick in next year's Major League Baseball amateur draft as well. So if you really care about that, about tanking, about getting better for the future, for the long-term future, you don't want to win many games, and you don't mind getting swept then. But still, as a Tigers fan at heart, and on opening day, you want to see your team be productive and get a W at the end of the day. So that was still highly disappointing. And Game 1, opening day for the Tigers on Friday, which, remember, should have been Thursday of last week. Instead, it was Friday because of rain, inclement weather, which always can be the case, especially before April. And opening day, Major League Baseball history was made with how long it took for opening day on last Friday to be played by the Tigers. 5 hours and 27 minutes. The longest opening day game in Major League Baseball history. So a marathon game, you could easily describe it as. And the season, as we know, is already a marathon. 162 games. And guess what? This season, because the Tigers are going to lose a lot more than they're going to win, is going to feel like a hell of a marathon. Even more of a marathon than a typical season is. And in recent memory, when the Tigers have been winning much more than they have been losing.
Yeah, Vito, man, you said it, 5 hours. I couldn't even make it through the entire game.
Right? Way too long of a game. And then if you had work or stuff with your family, you know, it's Easter week, and you might have something on Good Friday with your family to do.
Now we can even go back and reset the decision that was made. It was made 9 o'clock or so on the day of the game on Thursday. Do you think the Tigers handled that situation properly? Because there were a lot of wrinkles, there were a lot of situations that a lot of people were upset with because people were kind of looking at it, Vito, and going, hey, I just dropped $40 on parking. And because of the fact that there's rules, I guess, at Comerica Park that if there is a rainout or the game is canceled, that you only get maybe a couple hours and things like that. But some lots away from Comerica were not giving the refunds. I do believe some did actually give patrons a refund, but if you actually chose to stay, then it was okay. But there were other lots that took people's money that day and then had to go back on Friday and try and recollect. So people are upset. And I even tweeted out, I said, look, parking lots want your money. It's not a situation where these parking lot owners are going to be like, yeah, let's be customer friendly. You know why they're not? Because there's so many people that actually go to those lots. They pay their money. They pay a lot of money so that they don't really have to treat you well. Because if they were really hit up, they would be all for great customer service. Imagine if the next day, if people did that and they overcharged their customers or didn't treat them right and nobody showed up. They would make changes. The market would dictate that. But because everybody's there and things like that, people were a little bit upset because you and I looked and we kind of were like sending out polls. Is this game going to be canceled even? And we kind of knew the day before. It said 100% chance of rain early on. It said 100% chance of rain was going to happen on opening day.
Yeah, and you know what? Nobody really showed up all weekend long. And then you had Sunday. Saturday's game was canceled, by the way, was postponed until Sunday, the following day. So it became a doubleheader on Sunday. 1:10 and 6:10, Easter Sunday. Who was really even showing up to the ballpark? And they said, like, I think for the 6:10 game, even that 18,000 plus tickets were sold for that game. Guess what? There weren't that many people in the ballpark, in the stands at Comerica Park at 6:10. Luckily, we saw Cabrera start hitting, Fulmer over the weekend, pitch well in his first outing for the Tigers, so some positives, but still the rain and the games being canceled and the lackluster attendance, not the best way to start off the season for the Tigers and Comerica Park as a whole, Doc.
So, Vito, with that being said regarding instant replay, you had a chance to see it early on, hands-on. First game, the Tigers got screwed in terms of how it was used. Some people have called and tweeted us at Detroit Podcast and talked to us about ways to make it better. Replay is intended to get the call right. And so sometimes people will say, well, look, if you put a limit on it, does it really actually get the call right? But in the spirit of, making the game run smoother, you do kind of have to have a limit. What was your take on instant replay? Do you feel now, when you saw the Tigers get screwed by it and the way the system was used, do you feel like, as a guy that's a baseball purist, you're a guy that follows baseball, do you like instant replay in Major League Baseball?
Well, I've read on Twitter people complaining and saying, well, you know what, just include it for the postseason. No. Hell no. You got to have it for the full entire season. If you're going to use it, implement it, utilize it, you need it for the full entire season. So for the regular season as well, you can't just wait until the playoffs and then implement it, and then you change up the flow of the game. You can affect plays, how they're called, and all of a sudden, come postseason time when it's the most important time of the season, you got to be kidding me. It's got to be uniform throughout. It's just consistently, these video replays should not last 5 minutes. If you can't tell what the play is, what it should be, what the call should be, well, then stick with the original call. Because it was disputable then. After 5 minutes of reviewing the play, you couldn't tell whether or not you should reverse it or not. That means you keep the play, the call as is on the field, saying that Castellanos was safe. And maybe there was a tag that was applied by Francisco Cervelli, but guess what? It was disputable. You couldn't clearly tell, and so many different angles were showcased, right, on the FSD telecast on Friday. And then they reverse it? You've got to be kidding me, Doc. It was not a good reversal. Should not have been reversed, in my opinion, whatsoever.
Even if it was, it took you more than 2 minutes.
Right.
And so the phrase that needed to be applied was inconclusive.
Correct.
It just wasn't enough in 2 minutes to, really hit home that he was tagged out. So it should have been inconclusive. And it was really tough because you're in Detroit. It's unbelievable one of the first calls doesn't go the Tigers' way. I couldn't believe it. And then Ron Gardenhire gets ejected. Like I said earlier, I probably thought, at the time, I thought it was cool. I thought, okay, this guy shows some passion, but it did kind of, when you kind of let emotion simmer down, it seemed like grandstanding. And then Alex Wilson, I'm gripping on these decisions. What on earth, if you're watching, novices like me are watching going, dude, Alex Wilson's never thrown this many pitches late in a game. And, I was about to tweet, look, something bad's going to really happen here with Alex Wilson. And he threw up a meatball. And it's just, you wanted to get the season off on the right foot opening weekend. And to have as many things go bad as it went, I was just really kind of down on it. It was just really a bummer that it happened that way in terms of the bullpen collapsing, in terms of, but do you give credit to the Tigers for fighting? I mean, they came back.
Yeah, but fight only means so much if you don't win the dang ball game, especially on opening day. The fans everywhere, even the Tigers fans, are looking forward to a W. That's the only game the Tigers had to win this season, and they blew it. A bad omen for the rest of the season. And honestly, Wilson was left out there too long, but guess what? It preserved our man, Buck Farmer. Oh, the great Buck Farmer for the following day and for the rest of the weekend. So they didn't want to blow the whole entire bullpen and who could be used the rest of the weekend in that one game and opening day on Friday of last week. So that's why they preserved at least one arm for the remainder of the weekend against the Pirates, Doc.
Vito, we were having such a good recording. I was having fun talking baseball, and you brought me down. Seriously, Buck Farmer.
Buck Farmer, of all guys, had to be brought up. Who made the bullpen again.
What have I told you? Buck Farmer can't pitch, and now he's rocking this nasty beard. It's ugly. He needs to shave it pronto. What have I told you? I mean, I just don't understand what, in essence, the Tigers are trying to do with Buck Farmer. Look, he features a good fastball.
Yep.
He's got talent. He's not a bum. He's not a scrub. But is he a major league caliber arm? No, he's just not a guy that can consistently get outs. So in spring training, you use him as a starter. You try to get innings out of him. And then he comes in an appearance role over the weekend, and it's in a doubleheader. And it's unbelievable that he struck out the side. He comes in, I think, in the fourth or fifth inning. He has an inning, and he's able to handle business. And then it was a scenario, I think it was the game where the young starter had his first start. And
Ryan Carpenter.
Exactly.
Like, he's 31. He's not young. A AAA dude, though, in the past.
He got rocked.
Would not have been starting if it wasn't for those circumstances where the Tigers had to make up the game in the evening.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that, the weather and things like that, because we talked about the Tigers and the tickets and all that kind of stuff. You look at it, and Carpenter didn't do well. You now have Buck Farmer. You bring him in, and he has a good inning. You're like, okay, now on to the next inning. He gets destroyed. And you're like, nothing new.
We've seen this. We've been down this route before, right?
What are they looking for
from
him?
That.
What do they need what more do they need to see in Buck Farmer to realize dude can't cut it? And so I tweeted out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, Buck Farmer still ain't got it. He never had it.
Never has had it. You're right.
Drew Verhagen, Buck Farmer are not going to be contributing members. And then I listened to the post game. The Tigers lost both games to the Pirates on Sunday. And you wasted an opportunity with Michael Fulmer, who pitched really well that first game. But there was nothing. There was no juice. You almost got no hit. So I'm listening to that. And I actually was stupid enough on Easter Sunday, hanging with the family, tuned into both games on the radio.
You're crazy. You're sick.
I am crazy. I'm sick. I wanted to see. 1-0. The Tigers almost got no hit by a guy that was walking right. Almost no hit. No juice that game. You wasted a start from Michael Fulmer. A quality start. He was dealing. Give up an early run, and that was it. Locked it down. Tigers, no juice. Then in the second game, you get up early, and then you got this Carpenter cat, and he looks okay for a left-hander, but the Pirates, second time through the lineup, they figured him out quick, and they started smacking him around, and some epic bombs were blasted off by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then you got Buck Farmer in there, and he just can't cut it. He's not a guy that needs to be on this roster. Let him go. And the Tigers, when you kick off a rebuild, at some point you got to come to terms with decisions that you're going to make. And it would behoove the Detroit Tigers to basically do away with Buck Farmer. It's just quite obvious. For whatever reason, sometimes dudes need a change of scenery. It's just, for whatever reason, not working here in Detroit. He can't consistently get outs to the level of satisfaction that anybody watching can handle. And you got people in the media that are analysts kind of talking and making excuses for Buck Farmer, saying that once he learns control, once he's figured out how to mix speeds up and be a pitcher, that he'll be okay. Justin Verlander, it was revealed last season, pulled the guy aside and tried to have a heart-to-heart talk with him. And it was revealed that he talked to Buck Farmer and said, look, we all know you can throw. We all know that you got stuff. And it was revealed that maybe this year he might be more relaxed, Buck Farmer, because he knows he's not going to be sent to the minors.
Did he start smoking weed or something? Maybe that would help him get more relaxed. But he throws the fastball, good velocity, but that's it from Buck Farmer, in my opinion.
No, what should happen is, he should be sent down right away.
Well, it should be gone from the roster. Should not have even made the opening day roster. Like you said, we've been there, we've done that with Buck Farmer. How many times now, Doc? Right? We're done with him. We want him gone. Please, Tigers, we beg of you to get rid of Buck Farmer. We don't want to see him ever again in a Tigers uni.
Is there any saving grace? Do you have the same hope as the analysts on television that say that Buck Farmer can learn, and this year being relaxed and staying on? They believe that because it's a rebuild, they're like, look, in the spirit of a rebuild, we're just going to throw him out there, and whatever happens, happens. I don't believe that. I believe that there's a strong chance this dude's going to be either let go or figured something. He's not going to be on this team.
Well, I have no expectations for Buck Farmer at this point, because guess what? I'm done with them. He stinks. He has showcased the ability to smell up the joint. That's the only thing he's showcased the ability to do consistently, is to smell up the joint. And in 2018, I get it. The Tigers don't care about winning as much. It's not as important. It's about developing these young guys on the farm, really, specifically that. And then getting guys like Miguel Cabrera, Jordan Zimmermann, who looked all right in their respective, opening, games, debuts, whatever you want to describe it as. So they looked all right, especially Miguel Cabrera in the nightcap of the doubleheader on Sunday. Since then, he has hit. He looks good at the plate. Let's see how he does progress as the season does go along, though. V-Mart really hasn't looked good. So it's about those guys bouncing back. It's about Fulmer looking good, staying healthy. Fulmer looked solid, as you said, Doc, on Sunday in that 110 game. So I was proud of that, and you have to take the little positives. As thin, as minuscule as they might be, Doc, we have to take the positives day by day out of this season that we can get. There's not going to be many of them, but Michael Fulmer starting off well in his opening start of the 2018 campaign, we have to take that in stride and take that as a positive. Miguel Cabrera looking solid of late at the plate. We have to take that as a positive. So as minuscule as these positives may be about the Tigers as the season does go along, Doc, we have to take them into account and reflect upon them and cherish them. As sad as that may sound, we have to cherish those little positives, Doc, as the season does go along. And not many from this opening weekend, but at least they got a win on Monday. We have a win. The Tigers actually have a 1W now on the season.
First 4 games, what are your early impressions before the break of manager Ron Gardenhire? I was critical. I felt like because of the fact he doesn't use analytics, he brought in Drew Verhagen in the worst possible spot. When you needed a flamethrower, you could have used Jimenez, you could have used somebody else.
Maybe Shane Green.
Could have even brought in Shane Green, but he got torched.
I was going to say, though, so you know what? The analytical minds would argue, why not use Shane Green in that situation? Your best high-leverage situation relief pitcher when you used Verhagen on opening day. But guess what? Shane Green got lit up as well. So So Shane Green would not have done any better, it looks like, based on what he did when he did come into the ballgame on Friday last week. So really, in defensive guardy, your bullpen stinks anyway, so using Verhagen in that spot, well, I don't mind it that much. I really didn't, because it's opening day and you don't have a lot of greatly effective relievers to rely upon in those high leverage situations. And then you have more throughout the game, and who are you going to put in? Because you could burn Shane Green there on opening day, but he's your closer. He's the guy that should be using the 8th and 9th inning in high leverage, or 7th, 8th, and 9th inning in high leverage situations. So I can understand and totally see why Gardenhire wanted to wait to use Shane Green until later in the game on opening day. So I really don't fault him at that, because the only other guy you would have used instead of Verhagen or a guy such as that who's a middle innings guy is Shane Green. So you waited to use him, and it's opening day anyways. Why waste Shane Green in the 6th inning on opening day? So I don't really mind that decision of Gardy to use Verhagen there. Now, it burned him, but guess what? The Tigers' bullpen is going to burn Gardy a lot this season and make him look bad. Even when maybe it looks like he made a good decision on paper, guess what? Even, based on the stats, based on the analytical minds that are telling him what to do, influencing his decisions, the decision still might bite him in the behind, right? And burn him. Because of the fact that the Tigers' bullpen is so shoddy, you truly can't rely upon anybody, and that's why even those guys with the big stats, with the analytical minds, still might look erroneous on a consistent basis in 2018. And that's been the theme of past Tigers teams, right? We've been down this route, too, of the Tigers in the past, even when they've been relevant and winning more than they've been losing. The bullpen has been completely stinko. And guess what? The bullpen's going to probably, more than likely at least, Doc, stink up the joint on a consistent basis in 2018 as well.
Nothing lit up our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast more than that bullpen, man. People are just fed up with it. It should be something that, you got to figure out a way to construct a bullpen that can win, at least in the future. Look, I think when you look at it, people were like, we expect it to be bad. We're not going to show up. But we don't want it to be hilariously bad. We don't want Victor Reyes diving behind Iglesias and not being able to make a catch. Or the play that pissed everybody off was the play where you throw it to the cutoff guy and you don't throw it to third base. People, even on television, were like, and they're not critical that much at all. And they came out and said, look, as a major league player with eyes, if you know what's going on, you're not going to throw out a speedy runner. You should have right away, Reyes should have just thrown the ball to third base. He looked lost there versus Pittsburgh, and we don't want adventures out there. Look, you might be forced to play kids and things like that, but if you put them out in the outfield, they better know what they're doing.
I'd rather have JaCoby Jones at this point over Victor Reyes. A Rule 5 draft pick doesn't look Major League ready, even right now, Doc.
I want to talk to you about that because you got into it with a follower on Twitter at Detroit Podcast who actually was advocating for a hot-hitting JaCoby Jones. Yeah. We'll talk about that next, and we'll talk about further news and notes, and a new segment will debut on Tigers Talk called
Vito's Notebook.
All right, stay with us. You're listening to Tigers Talk on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the DSP Network is the Detroit Sports Commission. And since 2001, the Detroit Sports Commission has been bringing tons of marquee events to the Metro Detroit area. Amateur, national, and even international sporting events, including the NCAA tournament recently that we had the chance to cover, the Zenith Prep Kickoff Classic taking place in late August once again. Year in, year out, that's the best prep kickoff event for football in the Midwest, and you could say completely nationwide as well, Doc. And remember, the Detroit Sports Commission slogan is, where champions are made and championships are played. To follow the Detroit Sports Commission on social media and to find out even more about all the events they are bringing, Doc, to our very region, please follow the Detroit Sports Commission on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. And make sure to check out their fine website at DetroitSports.org. And back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and company, we will dive into Vito's notebook in just a second. And really, honestly, segging into it already a little bit here. You said Gardy had a tough weekend. Now, the manager who has a new gig, who had the toughest weekend, though, is Gabe Kapler of the Philadelphia Phillies. Did you hear about him a little bit? I have a stat or note to reveal that is really embarrassing for Gabe Kapler and the Phillies, Doc.
Briefly, because I've been so locked in on the Detroit Tigers, I did see that, some kind of call that he made to the bullpen was highly scrutinized.
Yeah.
Set the scene for me. What happened? Looks like Gabe Kapler in the first week of being a manager, it didn't go right.
Well, listen to this. Okay, so when you're a major league skipper, even a manager in the minor leagues, you need to know that you have somebody warming up in the bullpen, right? That's common sense. That's commonsensical to you and I.
He left somebody in the bullpen.
So I'm leading into that. Nobody was warming up officially in the pen, and he went out to the mound to make a pitching change. Guess what? Nobody was ready to come in from the pen. Gabe Kapler, rookie skipper. I don't care if you're a rookie skipper, though. Guess what, Gabe? You have to know that somebody's warming up in your pen before you pull your pitcher from the mound. You got to be kidding me.
Fart. Wow.
A brain fart of enormous proportions. And then on top of that, really quick, Doc, the Phillies, because of Gabe, used 15 pitchers in their first 2 games of the season. Already wearing out his pen. First 2 games of the season.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God, right?
Well, Vito, I guess like in everything, you can't discount experience. And when you don't have it, it looks like...
You look like a loser, a complete loser and nonsensical. I mean, but God,
So wait.
Doc, that's common sense knowledge to know you got to have somebody in the pen warming up before you go to the mound to pull your pitcher, man.
So
right?
did the pitcher that came in that was forced to come in, did he struggle? Do you
He
know?
got some warm-up pitches. And then the Mets skipper, they were playing the Mets, got upset, or the Braves skipper, excuse me, because he got all these warm-up pitches before he had to start throwing to his batters there from the Braves. So that wasn't right. That was uncouth, right? I mean, and the skipper from the Braves said, I'm mad. I think he got ejected. I mean,
That's funny, Vito.
embarrassing. Of enormous proportions.
Now, before we fully get into Vito's notebook, I want to get your sense of your little bit of a disdain for JaCoby Jones. Some people did note in spring training that he caught a hot bat. He did some things in spring training, and they're like, well, do we really want to have Mikie Mahtook out there in center field when you could maybe roll the dice on JaCoby Jones to finally see what he can do? A lot of people's attitude is, look, you're going to lose. Might as well see, the wealth of experience that you have, or might as well tap into and look and evaluate what you have on the roster. So somebody messaged us and said, you know what, based on his hot start, maybe even in the start to the season with a couple hits, maybe let's ride out the hot bat of JaCoby Jones, into which you replied,
yeah, not going to happen. I don't want that happening. I put it down right away, didn't I? I put an end to it right away. I mean, that's probably hilarious how I did it, because I kind of told the person there on Twitter that, hey, you have no knowledge. I don't even know what you're talking about. You make no sense because of this reason, Doc. In spring, it doesn't matter who's hot, who's swinging the hot bat, because it doesn't always carry over to the regular season. And JaCoby has shown time and time again now, Doc, that he's not a good enough major league bat to cut the mustard seed and to sustain any kind of regular ABs. Think about it. When has he ever impressed you enough to say he warrants regular ABs at the major league level? Never, right? And now you want to put Mikie Mahtook on the bench, who had a great second half last year, and place JaCoby Jones in the outfield in his place in the everyday lineup. You've got to be kidding me. Even though it's early in the season, you can throw the kitchen sink out there this year because you have to try things, be more and more willing to try things that maybe were abnormal in the past, because you're not going to win many games this season. So you want to see these young guys get a chance to shine. But JaCoby, who is young, I know that much, Doc, has been given the chance to shine how many times now at the major league level, and guess what? Hasn't been able to shine. He hasn't been productive to sustain any regular ABs. That's why he's on the bench, and maybe he can be a solid bench bat, utility player that can play a little bit of the infield at short and in the outfield at all 3 spots. But supplanting Mikie Mahtook, who had a great bat last year down the stretch, a potent run-producing bat down the stretch last season for the Tigers, that's not going to happen right now. Mahtook would really have to struggle, enormously going forward, Doc, for me to say that, hey, it warrants JaCoby Jones supplanting Mikie Mahtook out in left field. As, that's where Mikie Mahtook is. He can play center too. Maybe Leonis Martin won't sustain that regular gig in center field. But Martin, the advantageous aspect of him and his game is he can cover a ton of ground out there in center field. Leonis Martin, who didn't look horrible this weekend at the bat, has hit 16 home runs in a single season in the past. It was a while ago, though, now. So back to Mahtook. I like Mahtook starting, and I think he gets the shot to prove his worth much more than JaCoby will, and I think that's the right decision if that decision is made by Ron Gardenhire as well, Doc.
Okay, so the Tigers, at the time of this recording, are 1-3. They're playing the Royals. Do you think that with this weather, a lot of people are kind of chirping and they're just not happy with the whole notion of, teams in the East starting at home? You have a bunch of rainouts. I mean, it was the first time, we have to acknowledge, in history was made, Vito. History was made in that the Detroit Tigers took part in the earliest doubleheader ever in Major League Baseball.
Really?
Ever.
I didn't know that.
In the history of
Doc's
Everdom.
notebook. Look
Exactly.
at that.
April 1st is the earliest doubleheader ever played in Major League Baseball. And it's because of the fact that, teams like Detroit and this weird weather pattern that we've been having here in town where it's freaking April and we're still getting snow on Easter. and you've had a couple games canceled. You had to play a doubleheader on Easter, which is really horrible because I would say that not even maybe 18,000 people showed up total between both games. Now, they say that first game was 14, the second game was they said the first game was 14, second game was 18, but it looked like maybe 10,000 for maybe each, maybe 10,000 for the first and maybe 6 for the, for the second.
6K?
I would
About
say
600, not 6K.
It was bad.
600
It was bad, right, Vito?
Yeah.
So there's this notion that when you want to solve this problem, is there a way to logistically have teams in the East play teams from Florida, California, set maybe the Tigers out west? And is there a way to logistically do this where, maybe you play the first 6 to 9 games, the first couple weeks of the season on the road? It's just unfortunate that maybe you don't have any opening days before April 10th. It just as a rule. Because of the fact of the weather, you have an opening day in the March 29th? Seriously?
Too early.
It's too early.
And it screams at you that with the climate we live in, weather climate, God, what's going to happen with the weather? It could be so inclement that guess what? We have games canceled early on and a doubleheader played prematurely in the season on April 1st of all days, all early dates in the season. Way too early, and it screams to me that Major League Baseball is doing a little bit too much with the altering of the schedule to make this early of a start to the season happen. I don't like it, and guess what? Then you see these results happen with the inclement weather, the rainouts, and it hurts the attendance numbers when you have to make a doubleheader happen on Easter Sunday of all days. Really? When it's cold out, it's gloomy out on Easter Sunday too. It wasn't a great weather day for Easter Sunday here in Michigan, and you expect people to show up for both games in the 6-10 game when people are at their families' homes, friends' homes to celebrate Easter Sunday with their loved ones? I mean, that's why they said something like 18,000 plus tickets were sold for, I believe, the 6-10 game on Sunday. Guess what? They didn't even have close to that amount of people in the ballpark, right? They might have had 600 people, maybe 1,000. I would say about 600 to 750 people in the ballpark for that 6-10 game on Sunday, Doc.
That's some creative marketing, right? Creative accounting in terms of who paid. But hey, in the end, though, it was set. It was the lowest attended game, the first game of the doubleheader with Michael Fulmer. The lowest attended paid attendance since 2006. 10 years.
And guess what? You know why it's been that long? 06, remember. And we might have the skipper of that team on this podcast in the near future. But that team had no expectations. This team doesn't either, but guess what? That team surprised and was actually a good roster, ended up being a really good roster that made a World Series run. We don't see that happening. Nobody's predicting that, because at least back then they had the rotation and the skipper and Jim Leland. No offense to Ron Gardenhire, but with this team, the current state of the club, Ron Gardenhire really has no shot to really elevate this team to World Series title contender status all of a sudden. It's not going to happen. So don't even start dreaming about that being feasible and a possibility, because it's not whatsoever.
Okay, before we get to Vito's notebook, anything else that caught your attention from the first handful of games that took place for the Tigers in 2018?
Well, once again, I think the positives. And, I tweeted out something about Jordan Zimmermann. Did you see what I tweeted out on opening day, that he's like the highest?
You'll take it.
I'll take it, but I said, how highly paid of a long reliever do we have here? I mean, how much is he paid to be a long reliever? I said that, criticized Jay Zim, but honestly, it was decent from him. And guess what? We'll take decent results out of Jay Zim at this point. After last year, his ERA was what, Doc? Do you recall what it was?
Jordan Zimmermann, 4.3?
Above 6.
Ooh,
so we'll take a 4.3 ERA from Jordan Zimmermann this season. Think about that. He has lowered himself to those standards. Well, we'll take like a 4.5 earned run average, and around that in terms of a fielding independent pitching mark from Jordan Zimmermann in 2018. He's being paid enormously and way too high of a salary, and that's why his contract is definitely, I've said it before on this podcast, Doc, is an albatross of a contract for the Tigers to deal with.
All right, Vito, what time is it?
It is time for Vito's notebook. And how about those sound effects, courtesy of the Doc?
What is Vito's notebook? What are you going to make this about?
So I'm going to make it about news and notes from all around Major League Baseball, each and every week or each and every other week, something like that, Doc, going forward here on Tigers Talk. Now, the first note is really one that I already brought up. Tigers opening day was the longest in Major League history at 5 hours and 27 minutes. And what do you think, really quick, Doc, about the mound visits remaining? That stat, the MVR now on the scoreboard, isn't that funny to see? Because now it's 6 pitchers or 6 mound visits that you can make per game from each team, and then 1 additional one and extra innings for each team. I
got no problem with it. It's cool. It's kind of cool to see it lit up there in the ballpark, but I kind of want to see it where it'll be fascinating to see when the first team has 0 left and there's a crunch situation where you can't go out there and make a move or do something. So I can't wait till one day goes where it's 0. But it's okay.
So here we go. Moving on to the Phillies. Now to harp on Gabe Kapler once again. But he pulled his opening day starter, Aaron Nola, after 68 pitches. And they ended up losing that game 8-5. It was like 5-0. Nola was smooth sailing. Kapler pulls him, and to make matters worse, his ball club ends up losing that game. Opening day contest. There's one big note right there.
Gabe Kapler, terrible first
Two
week.
thumbs down from him right now, from us for him. And now Ian Kinsler, did you read? He's on the 10-day DL to start the season. He played opening day, went 1 for 4, and then after the game went on the disabled list.
Oh, no. Rough start for him.
Has a groin injury, and there's no word on whether he'll need to miss additional time because of that groin injury. Moving on, Rich Hill. Now, do you know how old Rich Hill is?
41?
He's close to 40. He's above 35. Anyways, here's the stat in Vito's notebook. In 50 starts after his 35th birthday, he has a 2.59 earned run average and 281 innings pitched. What a career renaissance. Wow. Don't you agree? How about that? After his 35th birthday.
He's been the talk of trade rumors at the deadline for so long. Interesting stuff from Rich Hill, a guy that still continues to get outs. And look, if you're left-handed, that's what we all hope for when we have kids, is that maybe you just get that left-handed kid because, remember Jamie Moyer, you get these pitchers.
Can pitch forever.
They can pitch well into their 40s being a left-hander.
And where did Rich Hill go to college, by the way?
Michigan.
The University of Michigan, your favorite university in the world. I know that much, Doc, about you. Now, how about Bartolo Colon, the Bart? Sexy Bart.
I knew you'd bring this up. Yep.
I have to bring this up. Something about him. Now, you might not know what I'm going to bring up here, but from 2011 through 2016, his age 38 to 43 seasons with the Yanks, A's, and Mets, he had a 3.63 ERA and 3.71 fielding independent pitching mark. That stretch of baseball from Bartolo Colon was better than his age 25 to 30 seasons when he supposedly was in the prime of his Major League Baseball career. Think about that.
Good for Bartolo, man. He's resurrected that career. And
yes.
I was shocked after his season, though, last year. ERA was up there.
It was bad. It was like a 7-something ERA.
I was surprised he went to the Rangers. I was surprised.
Got a chance because the Rangers needed starting pitching. Anyways, so from 98 to 03, his age 25 to 30 seasons when he spent time with the Indians, Expos, and White Sox, recorded now a solid ERA of 3.73 and a pretty solid FIP, fielding independent pitching mark of 3.97. Anything under 4 is good for fielding independent pitching. But still, those numbers when he supposedly was in the prime of his career, and he was a really outstanding pitcher back then, those numbers are worse than his numbers from his age 38 to 43 seasons. How about that factoid there?
All right, Vito, early surprises so far this year? I mean, obviously, the first game for Giancarlo Stanton was awesome. Couple home runs. The Yankees and the Red Sox doing some things. It looks like the leaders are going to be the leaders, and so far, so good. And so far, the story of the season, dude is heckling Bryce Harper, and he's at the bat. He's getting set up. And Bryce Harper had already hit a home run in the game, I believe. And some dude's like, overrated.
Come on, right?
And then he hits a home run to shut him up. Dude, that was classic. Awesome trolling, and then he just shut the guy up. And then finally, we got to end on this because it does kind of tear me apart a little bit to kind of think about and debate what the right decision is. The Detroit Tigers are recruiting fans.
Yes, I saw this, yep.
The Marlins fan man obviously tried to make a deal, tried to give the Marlins $200K for 3 years of great tickets for a set of 4 to sit, in great seats to be on television. Well, the Marlins kind of, they met with him. He met with Jeter once, and it wasn't right, and they basically slammed him, which is really weird, a weird way to treat a longtime customer. They're like, you add nothing to the program, you add nothing to the Marlins, you know what? And so they're letting him go. And it was right away when the news broke, he came out and said, I'm going to, shop around and be a fan of another team. And he's come out when he's been interviewed by the media to get attention. He's like, yeah, and a couple teams have recruited me and contacted me. Among them, the Detroit Tigers. They're that hard up for money that they might be willing to take on a fan that doesn't even really like the Tigers. And so for me, on 2 levels, I'm torn. Usually I have opinions and I can share what I think. I'm torn because my business sense, my business side is like, really, that's kind of cool. You go out there, you make the phone call, get a couple $100,000, you're going to get 4 tickets, you're going to get a fan that's going to do some things. He's doing it for attention, but you're going to get money in advance. He's going to cut you a check for 3 years in advance of tickets. You're going to get an influx of $200K. How do you turn that down? Now, the other side of me, the fanboy side, comes out and is like, dude, you sound desperate. You sound stupid that you want to get a fan that doesn't even like you just for money. What does that say about where your organization is at? You basically hoed yourself. You played yourself.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I'm conflicted. It's an equal feeling in that I like the business sense to try to get the money to reach out to them. But I do believe overall, net negative in terms of PR, you look stupid, you sound desperate, and you alienate real fans that go, dude, Is this where you're at? You're basically playing yourself. As DJ Khaled likes to say, yo, you played yourself. And I think now my decision is I'm 51-49 against it, but the Tigers played themselves, bro. Why would they do that?
It's pitiful.
Isn't it?
They have seeped themselves to such a low level that it's pathetic. It's unfathomable. It's something I'm not happy about being a Tigers fan, and I am totally not a Tigers fan anymore. No, joking about that. Disregard all that, joking aside. But it's foul. And now we'll play a quick game of fair or foul, okay? And that's foul on the Tigers' part. I call it foul. Totally. 2 thumbs up on it being foul. Now, another thing, just to bring up really quick here, Doc. I don't know if you heard about this, but how about this bunt that was laid down when it was a 7-0 game? The Twinkies, Jose Barrios was on the mound, and this rookie catcher from the Orioles, the Twins were playing the O's, laid down this bunt down the third base line when a shift was on. Barrios had like a one-hitter going. The Twins were up 7-0 in this ball game against the Orioles. And this rookie catcher from the O's, Chance Sisco, laid down a bunt down the third base line because nobody was there because of the defensive shift. Now, a lot of people have been up in arms calling it Bush League and calling it foul. What are your thoughts? Fair or foul on that?
I don't really care about, Major League players and the way they use bunts. Look, there's obviously this code of conduct. There's this, these non-written rules that you're supposed to follow, but I really don't care about that. Look, you play 9 innings. You have every right to go out there and bunt in a 7-0 game. You have every right to go out there and handle your business. You're just trying to get hits either way, whether you're trailing or winning, whether it's a no-hitter or not, a perfect game or not.
See, if it's a no-hitter or a perfect game, then there's the baseball pundits and old-timers, too, that go up in arms and are like, no, not for a perfect game. You can't do it then, or for a no-hitter.
Listen, if you want to, it's part of the game. You can bunt at any time. It's part of the game. Maybe do you tell your guy because, managers do take part in that, free swinging? Do they call for bunts? Maybe you don't have the manager call for it, but if the player decides on his own to do it and he's speedy, I guess the caveat is he's got to have speed. If it's just a guy that can really believe that he can lay down a really professional bunt, he's got a history of doing it, I have no problem with it.
What if it's a big bat, though, like a Chris Davis from the Orioles that can't bunt and then pops it up? What if he does that? He's trying to lay down a bunt down the third baseline to get that base hit. So if you're speedy enough, you can do it, can pull it off, why not? So if the defense is giving you that, right, to play with, to work with,
so I'm thinking
I say bunt.
You're on the side of foul?
Well, no. I'm going to say it's fair. It's fine. You're saying fair too, right? Are we both agreeing? Fair. You thought I would say foul.
I did. I did.
Wow, look at you judging me before I even had a chance to speak my mind about that.
Oh, man, I love this first week of baseball.
This was good, huh?
It's good to get back talking baseball, breaking it down. Kind of surprised, too, because to break it down, we really didn't kind of really go over the sheet a little bit in terms of what we're going to talk about. There was so much to break down that I think we hit on a lot of the big stuff. I'm looking forward to future editions of Vito's Notebook. I think I got to come up with a little bit better intro than that, maybe a musical intro. But it's kind of like your journalistic thing, and maybe I'll pump it up a little bit and let it play. It was a typewriter typing musical interlude there. But overall, I liked this episode. It was very fun. Good week of recording. We just got to get some wins. Let's just see some fundamental baseball. Let's see Gardenhire stay in the game and really help this Tiger team. And let's see those that are out there. I'm liking the discussion regarding McCann. I'm liking the way that people are taking it. Basically, it's this. We're talking to the hardcore fans. A lot of fans don't care. And basically, the numbers dictate that Lions coverage for us is the best. Mm-hmm. But people are out there talking Tigers. And I think if we come up with good topics, then the engagement will still be there.
Gardy, keep getting ejected.
All right, Vito,
I'll leave you guys with that. A great week of recording. Let's get the Tigers to start winning, like you said as well, moving into next week's episode of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company. Adios for now.
If you've liked what you've listened to, continue to support us. The free and easy way to help us keep the microphones hot, the lights on here in our Sterling Heights studio. Visit us, DetroitSportsPodcast.com.